All right, so today we're going to dive into a philosophy that, let's be honest, might feel a little wrong at first. It's from the book Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, and it basically challenges this core belief most of us have, that the goal is to save as much money as you possibly can. Perkins says, for a lot of people, that's actually a huge mistake, and his entire argument kicks off by taking a fresh look at a fable we all know.
Right? The ant and the grasshopper. We all know how it goes. The ant works its tail off, saves for winter, while the grasshopper just messes around. And yeah, we know the grasshopper starves in the end. But Perkins completely flips the script on us. He asks, what about the ant? If it spends its entire life just grinding, just saving, when does it ever actually get to enjoy any of it? This one question right here is the launch pad for the whole Die with Zero idea.
And that leads us straight to what he calls the ant's big mistake. Look, delaying gratification, it's a good thing, right? It's a virtue, but only up to a point. Of course, we need to prepare for the future. But the book argues that so many of us have become these like chronic ants where we just delay gratification forever. We're always saving for these amazing experiences we assume we'll have someday, but we never stop to ask if someday will show up when we're too old and tired to actually enjoy them.
So let's be super clear on this. The problem is not saving. Saving is good. It's oversaving. It's working and piling up money way past the point of what you'll ever need or even be physically able to enjoy. And this isn't just some philosophical idea. Perkins frames it as an optimization problem. The puzzle is, how do you squeeze the absolute most fulfillment out of this one finite life you've got? And to do that, you have to completely rethink what money really is.
This brings us to probably one of the most powerful concepts in the whole book, and it's an idea borrowed from the classic, your money or your life. It's all about getting real about the currency we are actually spending every single day.
And that currency, it's your life energy. I mean, just think about that phrase. It's the total number of hours you have on this planet, and it is a finite resource. Every single time you go to work, you are trading a piece of your life, hours you can never get back, in exchange for money. Once you start seeing every dollar not as paper but as a physical piece of your life, it changes everything about how you think about earning and spending it.
And this, right here, illustrates the cost perfectly. The book gives this example of a woman named Elizabeth who passes away with $130,000 left in her account. That sounds pretty responsible, right? But when you do the math and calculate her hourly wage, that leftover money represents 6,646 hours of her life that she spent working for literally no reason. She traded more than 2.5 years of her precious life energy for money she never, ever used. I mean, that's just a tragic waste.
Okay, so if hoarding money just leads to wasted life energy, what's the solution? Well, Perkins argues that we need to stop thinking only about investing in financial assets, like stocks and bonds, and start investing in something that's actually far more valuable: experiences.
This is such a powerful idea. We're all taught that we retire on our 401ks and our savings, but the reality is we retire on our memories. When you're older, when your health isn't what it used to be, it's the richness of your past experiences that's going to provide you with fulfillment and joy. Those are the assets that truly matter in the end.
This line really breaks down that fundamental shift in thinking. You know, traditional investing is all about one thing, maximizing your wealth for some distant future. But experience investing, that's about maximizing your life, starting right now. The return isn't a financial number, it's what Perkins calls memory dividends. You're not just saving money, you're actively converting that money into memories that will pay you back for your entire life.
And here's why this is such a great investment. See, an experience isn't just a one-and-done event. First, you get the initial joy from the thing itself, right? But then, you get the memory dividend. You get to relive that memory for years and years, and every time you think about it, it pays out more enjoyment. And it gets even better. When you share those stories with your friends and family, the memories actually compound, creating new experiences of connection. An experience is one of the only assets that can actually grow in value over time.
Okay, at this point, I know exactly what you're thinking. This all sounds amazing, but I am terrified of running out of money. And that is the biggest mental hurdle for all of us, right? Well, the book tackles this fear head-on, using actual data.
And the data is pretty shocking. It really goes against everything we fear. So as you can see, the median net worth of Americans actually keeps on rising well into their 70s. And look at this next point. For retirees with a good chunk of assets, over $500,000, they barely even touch it. They only spend down about 12% of it after 2 whole decades. And get this, a third of all retirees actually end up with more money than when they first retired.
Our fear of running out is so strong that it often means we just don't spend at all.
And here's why that happens. Our spending just naturally goes down as we get older. Experts have a name for these stages, the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years. As you can see right there on the chart, average spending drops, and it drops significantly as we move from our 60s into our 70s and beyond. So even with rising healthcare costs, the overall trend is down. We simply need a lot less money in our later years than we've been programmed to think.
Okay, so this isn't about being reckless. Die with zero is a calculated strategy. It is not a YOLO free-for-all. It's about using the financial tools we have to manage risk intelligently so we can live fully.
Let's be really clear here. The goal is optimization. It's about intelligently planning your spending across your entire lifespan to get the maximum possible life enjoyment. It's not about burning through all your cash by the time you're 50. This is a smart plan, not some wild gamble.
So how do we manage the two biggest unknowns in life? Dying too soon or living too long? Well, we use the right tools. Life insurance is something we all know. It protects against mortality risk, the risk of dying too soon and leaving people behind. But the real key to this whole strategy is its opposite, annuities. Annuities protect against longevity risk, that deep fear of living too long and outliving your money. By converting a chunk of your savings into a guaranteed paycheck for the rest of your life, no matter how long that is, you basically create your own personal pension. This removes the fear of running out and gives you a license to actually go and spend the rest of your assets. So we'll end with this question. If you actually shifted your goal from maximizing your net worth on a spreadsheet to maximizing your life experiences, if you truly aim to die with zero, what would you do differently? Starting today, what experiences would you start investing in? It's a really challenging question, for sure, but it's one that could change everything about how you spend both your money and, more importantly, your life.
There's this core belief, right? You work hard your whole life, you save your money, and then you leave a nice inheritance for your children. It's kind of seen as the ultimate act of parental love, the final proof that you provided for them. It's just what good parents are supposed to do.
But what if I told you that this whole idea, this deeply ingrained tradition, isn't nearly as selfless as we think? What if, according to the philosophy of die with zero, waiting until you're gone is actually the opposite of putting your kids first? Let's dive into why that might be.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to break down something big, the inheritance myth. This is that automatic, almost unquestioned belief that leaving a pile of money after you die is the absolute best way to be generous to your family.
I mean, this quote from the book Die with Zero just nails it. It cuts right to the heart of the matter. It argues that real generosity has to be an active, living choice, not something that just happens from beyond the grave. Think about it. You can't do anything when you're dead, right? So how can you actually be generous?
So here's what it really boils down to. Intent versus accident. A traditional inheritance, that's often just the financial leftovers. It's the accidental byproduct of saving up for a long life that maybe didn't go exactly to plan. The die with zero way, though, is totally different. It's a deliberate, thoughtful plan to give your kids the money you've set aside for them at the exact time it can make the biggest possible difference in their lives.
All right, so if it's just an accident, what's the big deal? Well, as it turns out, there's a huge problem with waiting.
The book has this great way of describing it. It calls it the 3 R's of inheritance. You're giving a random amount of money, because hey, who knows what'll be left over. You're giving it at a random time, because you don't know when you're going to die. And you're giving it to random people, because you can't even be sure which of your kids or grandkids will still be around. I mean, how is that a caring, thoughtful plan? It's literally the opposite. And this right here, this data is the perfect proof of that random time problem. Data from the Federal Reserve shows that the peak age for getting an inheritance is 60 years old. Not 25, not 35, 60. And when you think about it, it makes sense, with people living longer and having kids in their 20s.
Okay, so what does that actually mean for people? Well, by the time you're 60, you're often at your own peak earning years, or maybe you're even retired and financially set. Your ability to get real value and enjoyment out of a big chunk of money has gone way, way down. The money shows up long after it could have been a real game changer.
And this story, wow, it just brings it all home. A woman named Virginia Collin raised 4 kids, mostly, as she said, at the edge of poverty. Then, at 49, after she'd finally gotten on her feet financially, her mom passed away, and she inherited $130,000. And her reaction? Of course she was grateful, but
It would have been an absolute lifeline a decade or two earlier. Instead, it was just a nice bonus.
So, okay, if waiting is the problem, what's the answer? Well, it's actually really simple, but it's a huge shift in how we think. Give while you live. You become an active part of your own legacy.
But you won't believe how stuck we are in the old way of doing things. Somewhere between 80 and 90% of all wealth transfers are inheritances. They're not what economists call in vivo transfers, which is just a fancy way of saying gifts between living people. The vast majority of us are just on financial autopilot, leaving it all up to chance.
And this is where the disconnect gets really obvious. The author of the book ran a poll asking people the ideal age to get a financial windfall. The results? Overwhelming. More than half the people said between 26 and 35. Now, remember that Federal Reserve data? The reality is inheriting at 60. That's a massive gap between when money is most wanted and when it actually shows up. And it makes total sense, right? When you're in that 26 to 35 range, you're mature enough to handle money responsibly, but you're also young and healthy enough to use it for maximum impact. You could buy a house, start a family, launch a business, travel the world. It is the absolute sweet spot.
But you know, this whole thing, it goes way beyond just dollars and cents. When we really start talking about what we leave behind, we're talking about our true legacy. And that is so much bigger than money.
This idea applies to charity too. Just look at the story of Sylvia Bloom. She was a legal secretary who secretly built a fortune, and then, after she died at 96, left a surprise $8.2 million gift. Everyone called it selfless, but it was also super inefficient. Imagine what those charities could have done with that money decades earlier. Contrast that with Chuck Feeney, the billionaire who pioneered giving while living. He intentionally gave away his entire $8 billion fortune and got to see the incredible impact it had with his own eyes. Now, this is a pretty bold statement, but the point is crystal clear. Real generosity is an action. It's a choice you make. When you're alive, you can choose to give. Once you're gone, your assets are just transferred. The personal, human choice is gone, and so is the act of generosity.
So this is maybe the most important takeaway of all. Your real legacy, the thing your kids are truly going to value, it's not a number in a bank account. It's the sum of all the experiences you had together. It's the ski trips, the lessons, the laughter. Working those extra hours to earn a little more money might actually be costing your kids their true inheritance if it means less time with you.
So it really forces you to stop and ask yourself a huge question. Is your main goal to leave behind a number on a statement, or is it to leave behind amazing shared memories and a positive impact that you actually got to see for yourself?
Okay, so if you're on board with this idea of being more intentional, you're probably asking, how do I actually do this? Well, let's get into the practical side of things.
It's actually a pretty simple three-step plan. First, decide exactly how much you want to give your kids. Then, mentally or legally, separate that money out. It's theirs now, not yours to worry about. Second, decide when they should get it, aiming for that sweet spot we talked about. And third, give it to them. Don't wait for someday.
And the payoff here is huge. I mean, not just for your kids, but for you. You get to see your gifts change their lives. By separating their money out, you actually reduce your own anxiety about running out, which frees you up to spend on your own life. And best of all, you can invest in the only thing that really matters, creating those priceless memories together right now.
So let's just leave it with this one final thought. How could giving to your kids today instead of tomorrow completely change their lives and yours? It's a powerful shift in perspective, from planning for your death to really truly investing in their life and your own.
For most of our lives, we're taught one simple thing about money. Save as much as you possibly can. Build this giant nest egg for the future, right? But what if that's the wrong goal? What if the whole point of money isn't to die rich, but to live the richest life you can right now? Well, we're going to dig into that exact idea.
So that's what author Bill Perkins was thinking during his 45th birthday party. I want you to just picture this for a second. You're at a secluded hotel, white sandy beaches in St. Bart's. Your best friends, from every stage of your life, they're all there. Your family's there. He even flew in Natalie Merchant for a private concert. By all accounts, it was truly the party of a lifetime. And that brings us to the big question. That party? Well, it cost a huge chunk of his liquid net worth. Now, most financial advisors would probably call that, reckless. But Perkins says it was one of the best investments he ever made. So I got to ask you, would you do it? Would you trade a big piece of your savings for one single, absolutely unforgettable experience?
See, that party wasn't just some crazy whim. It was a very deliberate choice. Perkins knew he didn't want to wait until he was 50 because his mother's health was already a concern. And you know what? He was right. By the time his 50th birthday rolled around, his dad had passed away and his mom's health had gotten a lot worse. The window for that one perfect experience, it had closed forever.
And that right there really hits on the core problem, doesn't it? We're all basically wired to work hard, save for the future. And that's a good thing. But if we just delay gratification forever, pushing all our dreams off to someday, well, we risk waking up one day and realizing someday already passed us by. A life of delayed gratification can easily become a life of no gratification at all. So, if the goal isn't just to save and save and save endlessly, then what is it? This is where this really counterintuitive solution comes into play. It's a concept called the net worth peak.
So what exactly is the net worth peak? It's that one single moment in your life when your net worth hits its absolute highest point, and from that day forward, the whole game flips. You stop trying to accumulate and you start decumulating. That means you intentionally, strategically start spending down your savings to buy the best life experiences you can, with the goal of, well, dying with zero. What's so wild about this is how it totally reframes your financial goals. See, traditionally, our target is a number. I'll retire when I hit $2 million. The problem is, that number is always a moving target. You hit 2 million and you start thinking, 2.5 would be a little safer. You just end up working on autopilot. But the die with zero idea changes your goal to a date, an age. That date becomes this fixed point on the horizon that forces you to switch from saving mode to living mode.
Okay, I know what you're thinking right now. This sounds absolutely terrifying. What if I run out of money? It's the #1 fear people have, for sure. So before you can even think about a peak date, you have to tackle this fear head on.
And the crucial thing to get here is that this isn't about being irresponsible. Not at all. It's about being strategic. So the very first thing you have to do is figure out your survival threshold. That's the absolute bare minimum amount of money you need to live with no other income for the rest of your life. This is your safety net.
And the calculation is actually pretty simple. First, figure out your bare bones annual cost of living. Then, estimate how many more years you expect to be around. Multiply those two numbers together. Then, and this is the key part, you only need to have about 70% of that total saved up. Why only 70%? Because your money isn't just sitting in a mattress. It's invested and earning interest, and that interest makes up the difference.
Let's use the book's example to make this feel real. Let's say you need about $12,000 a year just to survive, and you expect to live another 25 years. Now, you might think, okay, I need $300,000. But if you assume just a modest 3% interest rate, you actually only need about $213,000. The interest your money is making covers the rest. So once you have that survival number covered, you can stop worrying and start thinking about your peak.
All right, so you've figured out your survival number. You're safe. Now we get to what is maybe the most surprising part of this whole idea. The best time for your net worth to peak is probably way, way sooner than you think.
And to get why, you have to realize that your ability to have amazing, fulfilling experiences, it's not just about having money. It's a combination of 3 things: your health, your free time, and your money. And you really need all 3 to get the most out of life.
This chart just lays out the trade-offs perfectly. When you're young, say 20 to 35, you've got amazing health, but no time and no money. Then, in your middle years, your wealth is high, but your health starts to decline. And finally, when you're older, you've got the time and the money, but your health is low, and that really limits what you can actually do with it all.
This all leads to this idea called the declining utility of money. A dollar you have when you're 45 is actually worth more in terms of life enjoyment than a dollar you have when you're 75. Why? Because at 45, you can use that dollar to go scuba diving or hike a mountain. At 75, well, your options might be a bit more limited. So waiting until you're 65 to start really living means you've spent years working for money that you literally can no longer fully enjoy.
So after running all the numbers, what does the research show? For most people, the optimal net worth peak, the perfect time to stop accumulating and start spending down, is between the ages of 45 and 60. Not 65, not 70. This window, from 45 to 60, is the sweet spot where you still have enough health to actually enjoy the wealth you've worked so hard to build.
Okay, so knowing all of this, what are we supposed to do? How should it change how we act? Well, the final piece of this puzzle is all about embracing a totally different kind of risk. It's about learning to be bold, but not foolish.
The key concept to understand here is something called asymmetric risk. This is basically any situation where the potential reward if you succeed is massive, but the penalty if you fail is, well, relatively small. When you're facing a risk like that, the author argues the biggest risk of all is not taking the chance.
Let's take the classic Hollywood dream as an example. At 22, moving to LA to become an actor? That's a bold asymmetric bet. The upside, you become a star. The downside, you wait tables for a couple of years and then start a different career. You've got tons of time to recover. But at 52, with a mortgage and a family, making that same move is foolish. The downside is huge, and the potential reward is smaller because you have fewer years to enjoy it.
So here's the big takeaway. What it means to be bold actually changes as you get older. When you're young, being bold is about taking career risks. But when you're older, being bold means having the courage to spend the money you've worked so hard for. It's about fighting that deep-seated instinct to just keep saving and, instead, choosing to live.
And this is the final thought I really want to leave you with. This quote just sums up the entire philosophy. People are more afraid of running out of money than wasting their life, and that's got to switch. For so many of us, the biggest, scariest thing is an empty bank account. But what if the thing we should really be afraid of is looking back at the end of it all and realizing we ran out of time? What if the real fear shouldn't be dying with $0, but dying with 0 experiences?